Hi there, and welcome to this very first Legacy Wealth Singapore investment chat. My name is Jen, the head of marketing, and joining me is our head of investments, Mr. David Agar, who's got 20 years of experience working in the UK, Malaysia, and Singapore. Dave, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Jen. Yeah, thank you for that wonderful introduction. You look well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been working out a lot, just walking around the apartment. That helps. What about you?
Yeah, not so much of that really, but yeah, trying to keep it all positive. Yeah.
That's good. So that's one thing to talk about, keeping things positive, and in today's climate and environment, about how to invest through a crisis. So I guess my first question will be is, what is a crisis in investment markets, and I guess how do they happen?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we tend to get, I suppose, a crisis of confidence fairly regularly in investment markets, in the stock market in particular. And certainly so far this year, it's been exactly that.
All right, I see. Is there a situation where we can actually avoid them, or it's totally unavoidable?
No, the history books tell us that events such as this, certainly stock market crashes, if you will, or crises in stock markets, tend to happen fairly regularly, much more regularly than we would hope. And I suppose another way to look at this is that we expect by committing our money to the stock market that we'll achieve a return well in advance of that from a bank account or from other asset classes. So of course, with that expectation of return, we should expect some risk. So absolutely, and unfortunately, crises such as this are part and parcel of the investment landscape.
So then, should we fear a crisis like this?
I suppose it depends on where we are in our investment journey. So we've seen markets fall quite sharply so far this year, in the first quarter of the year. And so absolutely, if you're at the point at which you want to start using some of that money that you've committed to the investment markets, then it certainly is something we need to be very aware of, and we should worry about. If you've planned correctly, and if your assets are reflective of your investor profile, then again, it should just be events which are part and parcel of investing, and we should be able to look past them and not concern ourselves too much with them.
That's perfect, which leads me to my next question. So how do we plan for a crisis like this?
Yeah, so obviously it starts from an understanding of your own financial position, your own circumstances, and what you want to achieve through investments. There's a few fairly basic financial planning steps that we should always take. One, of course, is we should always be diversified. We should have exposure to a number of different asset classes that all behave in a different way. We should certainly be very wary of what we call over-leveraging, which is borrowing too much to invest in a certain asset class. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as a sure thing in investing. So staying diversified again makes sense. And then we should always have a cash buffer, an emergency pot of money, which you can potentially use to take advantage of market falls like this, and to cushion us against any short-term needs we might have for liquidity.
Sound advice. So let's just say if I'm a current investor, and we know about today's climate, what's the first thing he or she should do?
I think in general, if you plan correctly, then it's fairly important to not panic. Often at times like this, we feel like we can react in a positive way to a market correction like this. We feel like we can outthink the markets. We can analyze, and we can use our analytical side to try and plan out what we think we should be doing in these markets. History tells us that often the conclusions that we come to are very, very wrong. So instead of doing that, often it's worth talking to people who've been through crises like this in the past. And again, that might mean that it's worth actually employing a financial advisor, a financial planner, or an investment advisor to get some advice. Of course, I would say that, this is my industry. But I think especially if you're having an emotional reaction to this crisis and you're thinking of doing something different with your investments, then it's often worth speaking to a professional.
So in other words, just keep calm and speak to a professional.
It sounds like a t-shirt, but yes, Jen, that's about right.
That's exactly what I've done, and just this past 5 minutes.
Good work.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you so much for the chat. Hope you're keeping well.
Always a pleasure, Jen. You stay well.
Take care. See you, mate.
Bye.